Welcome back, everyone, to Crime and Entertainment. We have a very special guest here with us today. Now, if you don't recognize this man right off the bat, I know you either going to see his movie within the next week because it's just a rite of passage right here around Halloween. He is the star of one of the biggest movies in the world. It's still the number one grossing movie right now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
There you go. Michael Smallwood, ladies and gentlemen, star of Halloween Kills. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. We are glad to have you on the show. Now, right off the bat, we'll kind of start from the beginning, and get to Halloween Kills. But right off the bat, I got to ask, how was it making that film? Was it pretty cool?
It was like a really cool experience. I was on set for a month, all night shoots, if you can imagine how that goes. So basically, you're spending the entirety of your time, getting there at 6 p.m. and leaving set at 8 a.m. and trying to get some sleep in between and living that vampire lifestyle for several weeks at a time. Takes a little bit to adjust to at first, but man, like that movie was so cool to get to like work on, and some of the stuff we got to do, some of the stuff I got to do in that movie I had never done before. And some of it was stuff that like I don't think like not many people have really done, and we all had to like on set be like, hey, how are we gonna do this? Let's figure this out. But yeah, I mean, like just an incredible team, an incredible crew, and great cast. I mean, just some of the best weeks of my career, honestly.
Yeah, I worked a third shift schedule for a long time, and that was pretty challenging, just having to acclimate your body to being up when it's not supposed to be up. That can get kind of grueling. Even when you get plenty of sleep, you still feel tired because you're up at the times that your body's not really, expecting you to be up under normal circumstances. So
my parents did it for many years off and on. And at a certain point while filming it, I was like, oh, is this what this was like for them? Oh, okay.
Yeah. No matter how much sleep you get, it seems like you're always exhausted, but you guys put it together.
Yeah. And like for me, like I'm a really light sleeper, so I can't just turn off and go to sleep at a certain point and then like not wake up. So I would like fall asleep at like 8:30 or 9 in the morning and then wake up at like 12, and my body would be like, all right, cool, like you got to get up and start the day. And I'd be like, no, our day doesn't start for another 6 hours, like go back to sleep. Like
I had to have the blackout curtains and stuff when I was home because it's hard for me to sleep in daylight because it pierced through the window there, and I had to go all the extra 9 yards just to keep it as dark as possible so I could get some sleep during the daylight and function good at the job. But we're going to get more into Halloween, but I guess, like I said, let's start from the beginning here. Like, did you always have a passion to be an actor, or did that, you get that a little bit later?
I think I've basically always had it. I like my parents will tell stories about like, so apparently before I could officially learn to read, right? Like before I could actually read, I would memorize the books that were being read to me. And so then my parents would like have parties or have people over, and I would go up to those people and be like, hey, look, I can read. And then I would just recite the book and turn the page at the right place. So, I've always kind of been doing it, but like I really picked it up in school. Like we did plays at my elementary school. I played Santa Claus in 2nd grade, and like we auditioned. So I had to like earn the part of Santa Claus. And then, but I got really serious about it in junior high, like middle school, junior high. I got really serious about acting. I really wanted to do it. I've wanted to be a part of movies, like as a career. Like I saw Jurassic Park in the theater, like opening night. And I was like, whatever this is, like however they make this, I want to be a part of that. Yeah. Like whatever that is, like, I don't want to do anything else but work on making something like this. And so I've just been like an acting fan ever since. Like, and I also like, I saw Jurassic Park, and then the next year, like I got really into professional wrestling. And so, I've wanted to be an actor ever since.
Oh yeah. Well, that's somewhat of an acting career too, professional wrestling. I was a huge 100% fan coming up.
It's live theater, man. It's my favorite form of live theater.
Yeah. I was, I don't know how old you are. I was big in the WWE era or the Attitude era. That was my prime time of watching, man. I mean, I like the old school. You know, I was, of course, a Hogan fan coming up, you know, WrestleManias and stuff like that when he was with the WWE or F at the time. But then when he went over to the NWO and they had that over there and the Attitude Era in WWE, I was at my peak fandom for that, for sure. That was good stuff back in those days.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a wrestling fan ever since like since '94, since WrestleMania 10. I've been off and on like a huge fan. Like I'm still a fan today. Like my wife and I have been to a couple WrestleManias. Like,
well, 10, that was the ladder match, right?
Yep.
That was the first ladder match with Shawn and Razor.
Shawn, yep.
Yep. That was good stuff. I can't remember who main evented 10. I can't remember right off the bat.
Bret Hart and Yokozuna.
That's right. Okay, that was where they had the two matches.
Two world title matches.
Yeah. They split the Rumble there. Okay. All right. So where did you grow up, you know, as a youngster? I understand. I found out by researching you a little bit that you're actually, you know, here in Charleston. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. You know, this guy right here is representing right here in Chucktown. So did you grow up here? Were you?
No, I'm from Baltimore originally.
Baltimore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I grew up in Baltimore, and we moved to South Carolina, upstate, like Union area, right before I started junior high. And then I came to Charleston in 2004 for college and loved it. Loved going to CFC. Graduated in 2009 and worked in Atlanta for a year. And then I moved back here, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. Now, when you realized, you know, you were going to kind of pursue this acting gig, you know, full-fledged and head on, what was like your first, I guess, I know a lot of people will intern and things like that. What was your first paid gig for doing something in this, whether it be acting or, you know, script, whatever you had to do, and extra screenwriting, whatever the case may be? What was your first paid gig?
So that's a really good question, and no one ever asked me this question. So my very first ever paid acting gig was in college. Actually, we did a production of, oh man, I'm trying to remember exactly. I think I'm trying to remember exactly which show it was. I think it was Cabaret that we did a bonus performance or something, and because of that, the cast got paid. So they, like, my very first acting paycheck was like $75 for this performance of this show in college. I think I still have the check here somewhere. Like I still have at least have a copy of it. Like I was like, I'm keeping this. So it's in my files somewhere in my garage. And then, so that was my very first like paycheck ever as an actor. My first like professional gig was after I graduated college. I got a gig working for the CDC down in Atlanta, filming a video about like getting STD tested. And that was my first ever professional film gig.
Oh, all right. So now I was checking out your IMDb. I got to get into a few of the things you got working there. The first one that caught my eye was Scooby-Doo and the Manson murders. You got to tell me, because I couldn't find a whole lot about that here. You got to give me the lowdown on this. I was a huge Scooby-Doo fan coming up, man. I was a big fan of the cartoon. You know, I always wanted to figure out who was doing what, but you're mixing Scooby-Doo and the Manson murders. I got to understand what this is about and when I can watch this and what the deal is here.
So you can watch it on YouTube right now.
Okay.
It's a play by this guy, Kevin Lanigan, who is wonderful. A really cool guy who lives in New York. And he wrote this play about the Scooby-Doo gang showing up and having to deal with Charlie Manson and the Manson family, and how the Manson family end up like influencing and like corrupting the Scooby gang. It's very funny, super absurd. I got to play Fred, which was a lot of fun. And we did it last year. So like during the pandemic, it's like a Zoom play, and he put it up on YouTube. So like, yeah, you can just go to YouTube and find that play and watch it. It is very funny, especially like you said, if you're a fan of like Scooby-Doo, and like he does a really great job of like paying off those characters, but also tying them into like that like Manson family craziness. It's kind of like a little bit like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right? Because it has like Manson family stuff going on too.
Yeah.
But with the Scooby-Doo gang.
Yeah. What did you think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? I liked it. What do you think?
I didn't actually like that movie. There were things in it I liked. I loved everything Leo was doing. Like Leonardo DiCaprio's storyline in that movie, I love his performance. It's some of the best work he's ever done. It's a really cool story. All the Brad Pitt stuff, I just didn't care about, and I just was like, this is too long. I don't like this character. I don't really like the scene, like the stuff that he's doing in the movie. Like, I would have loved that movie if it was just about Leo, but because it's not, it's like a movie that has like stuff I really like in it, but it's also way too long. It's so overindulgent. I couldn't get into it.
Well, I think a lot of people were expecting something different, maybe more focused in on the Mansons or something like that. That may have threw people for a loop too, because you kept waiting on that to come up and happen, and I guess it just never really did. So, and I don't know if he done that as kind of respect issue to not really go into, all the stuff that happened with Sharon Tate. I'm not sure. I've read a few things, and I know parts of her family weren't happy with some of the things that they portrayed in there.
I'm sure. And, Tarantino has this whole thing like of doing these like revisionist history movies, right? Especially lately, like the back half of his career has been all of this, like Inglourious Basterds, Django, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like these revisionist history takes, right? And I don't have a problem with it. I think that's a really interesting way of tackling these like time periods and telling these very interesting stories. So that wasn't really my issue. I just, like I said, the pieces of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood didn't work for me. Like watching it, I was just like, I don't like Brad Pitt's character. I don't like, some of the scenes are good. Like I said, some of the scenes are really good. Some of the scenes I was like, this is just in here to take up time. Like cut some of this. Like, and like I said, and what makes it worse is that in the middle of all that is this really good Leonardo DiCaprio movie. It's like the scenes with Leo and that little girl in the set of the TV show, that is such good movie. Like that stuff is awesome. And so I was just like, man, if you would cut out the parts of this that are really good, this could have been a great movie. But it's just got too much other stuff going on. And some of, I like Tarantino as a director, but he has, he's got some habits that, like, if he spends too much time doing some of his habits, you're like, okay, come on, man. Like now I'm out of the movie now. Like, and that's one where I was like, oh, you're kind of like taking some of your, and I kind of felt this way about The Hateful Eight too. Like you're taking things about some of your movies that have really worked, but now you're just spending way too much time doing all of them. Yeah. To the point where I'm like, come on, man. Like I liked your movies, but these last two, they're getting too long. They're getting kind of indulgent. Like
Pulp Fiction worked good the way he does stuff because there were so many different sub stories in the movie that worked. And you didn't get tired of any one particular part of the story, or at least I didn't. Jackie Brown, to me, you could see where certain elements were starting to get to kind of where he is now, where things were just not overly stretched out, but just stretched out just a little bit, which I still enjoyed Jackie Brown.
I like Jackie Brown a lot. I feel like a lot of people just haven't seen it, but I like that one a lot.
Oh yeah. I thought that was I think Samuel L. Jackson's even quoted as saying that was like his most favorite movie to do ever, not just of Quentin's, but just period. Really, really good piece. I think Robert Forster, I think was in there. He just passed away not too long ago. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, Pam Grier, there was a lot of big name people. Michael Keaton,
Bobby De Niro, like great cast.
Yeah, so that's cool stuff, man. Yeah, what we got here, and I'm gonna just circle back to it one more time. We got here talking. I'm gonna go watch it as soon as this interview's over. Scooby-Doo and the Manson Murder. So be sure to go check that out.
Go watch it. It was a lot of fun to get to work on that project. Like Kevin sent me the script, and I was like, dude, this is wild. Like we're gonna record this. You're gonna put it up. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in.
Now you're actually in the first Halloween. Well, let me clarify. You're in the remake of Halloween from 2018. Mm-hmm. There's been some remakes and whatnot. Rob Zombie tried his hand at it, but you're actually in that one too. Now, how did you go about getting in position to get that role for that first one?
So they filmed Halloween 2018 here in town, here in Charleston. And
I was actually supposed to be an extra, and I wasn't able to get off work. It was like one of the scenes, I think, where they're having a party. I was just supposed to be like, probably wouldn't even know it was me, but I would. and I wanted to, I couldn't get off of work to get there. But yeah, I did see that they were filmed it all down here, and that's really cool.
So they filmed it here, and one of the things they did, Rough House, held auditions, right? So they brought in a bunch of people to read for different parts, and I got to go in, I got to read for it. I got to be in the room with David and Danny and a bunch of the Rough House team, and I read for like a townsperson. I read for just like they're filling out Haddonfield, and they're trying to find actors to play these various characters. And so I went in. I read for a scene where we stumble. I don't even think the scene was in the movie, but like they had written up a scene where like we're looking at some bodies that Michael has hung up, and we're reacting to it. And so I read for that, and then I left, and I was like, well, I don't know what's going to come from that. Maybe they'll call me back in for a character or something, or maybe nothing will happen with it. That happens all the time, And a couple weeks later, sure enough, my agent called me and was like, hey, they've got a part for you they'd like you to play. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, it's Halloween. Of course I want to do it.
Yes.
This is one of the greatest movie franchises of all time. It's one of my wife's favorite horror franchises. Like, we own all except for the 2 movies she hates.
Three's gotta be one of those.
What?
Three's got to be one of those.
3 we don't own, and Resurrection we don't own.
Is that one with Busta Rhymes?
Yeah, that's the reality show one with Busta Rhymes. We also don't own the Rob Zombie ones because we have issues with the Rob Zombie ones, which is mainly that he gives Michael Myers a backstory. Like, don't explain the killings. Michael Myers is like the perfect movie monster because we don't know why he killed anybody. But like that's my issue with Rob Zombie's movies. He spent like 30 minutes making me go, well, yeah, if I'm Michael, I want to kill these people too. It's like, I shouldn't think that. But then, I got the script, and then I went to set basically, and did my scene in 2018, which is the long one take through the neighborhood, with Carmela and I, heading off to our party, and Carmela's standing there staring at him, and is he going to kill her? And he doesn't. He walks away. But yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. Like, they liked us from the call. They brought us in to play those parts, and I was like, well, that's such a cool Easter egg. Like, no matter, I've got to be in that really cool shot with Michael Myers. I kind of thought that was it until they called me and were like, hey, can we bring your character back for the sequel? Like, yeah, you absolutely can.
Yeah, you can't find a shorter answer than yes, I don't think, for that question. Now, were you always a fan of horror in general, not just, the Halloween series, but was horror kind of one of your favorite genres, or?
It wasn't growing up. I mean, as a kid, horror is horror, right? It's, right. You see a few horror movies. They're the ones that scare you and the ones that don't. And then as I got older, I was really into, I'm a kid of the 90s. So right. Scream is the greatest horror movie that's ever been made.
Yeah.
And loved Scream, loved all those movies, but really like the 90s teen slasher genre was my horror, right? Mm-hmm. But I kind of fell out of it as a genre in the 2000s. I wasn't really a big fan of like a lot of the like torture porn craze. I don't really care about ghost stories. So once we started doing like either torture movies or ghost stories, I was like, okay, I'm kind of done with this genre now. Like, I don't have anything for it. But I've come back around in the past few years, especially like the last decade or so, because like, man, horror movies have been so good for 10 years. Like, they've been wonderfully about so many different things. Some of the best movies of the year consistently are horror movies now. And I've spent a lot of time on horror movie sets now. Like, a lot of my friends who do independent film, they make horror. I wrote and directed a horror film myself this year. I've done these 2 Halloween movies. Like, it's been a rediscovery of horror as a genre over the last 10 years. I've really loved it. And I've come to appreciate some of the older movies. I used to teach, and I teach film history, and like movies like Psycho and Halloween are on my curriculum because I'm not going to not teach them. They're incredible landmarks of cinema history. So yeah, I mean, I've certainly come back around to a much deeper appreciation of horror as a genre. in the past 10 years, which has been great because I've been able to discover a lot of movies that I missed, when I wasn't really into the genre, rediscovering discovering a lot of things now as an adult that as a kid I just was too scared to watch or just didn't think about it the right way. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the genre now.
Yeah. Horror's always been one of my favorites. I mean, coming up, the forefathers of horror was, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and depending on who you were, I wasn't the hugest Hellraiser fan, but I know Pinhead was always there. But then it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre for me was kind of like the top four, and I loved all those films. But like you said, when Scream came out, it kind of took things to another level. It got out of those, superhumanly powerful guys, and it was just, this is the guy next door type of thing. And then it kind of not necessarily made fun, but it was kind of the start of that dark. You can still mix your comedy in with the horror. And that was the only movie, I think, to this day that I've ever seen in the theater more than twice. I wound up
really
that 4 times, the first one. Yeah. My sister took me to see it because I was underage, obviously. So my sister took me to see it the first time. Then I told my other sister about it. They actually lived in different states. We were out of town in North Carolina. When we came back, I told her, the other sister that I had here, about it. So she took me. And then I talked my mom into taking me to see it again. So I wound up seeing it 3 times in the theater. Yeah, it was.
I have seen many movies multiple times in the theater. But yeah, I don't think I saw the original Scream in the theater. No, I wouldn't have. I would have been too young to have seen it in the theater, but I definitely watched it on home video when it came out.
Oh yeah, now I rewatch a lot of stuff, because I have a collection of movies this massive because I love going back and watching old stuff in any genre. But yeah, Scream was definitely one of those ones because it kept you guessing of who you thought it was, and then the fact they threw the big swing in there. There was 2.
Yeah,
and so I would rewatch it again to try to figure out, all right, well, this kill was probably Stu or this kill was probably Billy. Trying to figure out who was who, because that was kind of what they were doing. One of them would go somewhere to have an alibi, and then the other person would kill. So it was just
you can actually go through and like track. People have done it, like gone through and like tracked, like this one has to be him. This one has to be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the trailer for the new one they're about to drop?
Oh yeah. Oh, I love the trailer for the new one. Like, I'm Sidney Prescott. Of course, I've got a gun. Like, yeah, you are. Of course you do. Like, what I love about Sydney as a final girl is that Sydney learns as a final girl, right? So you watch that first movie, and then you go into the next one and the ones after. Like, Sydney is no longer acting like, oh, how could this be happening or what's going on? Like, Sydney has adapted to each situation, and so you watch her not make the same mistakes over and over again. It's so cool watching all of the movies and seeing her as a character evolve through them. One of my favorite film characters of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned that you were a teacher. Now, what school did you teach at? COC or?
No, I used to teach at a private school on Johns Island for a couple of years, and now I am I'm the lead teacher for Pure Theater here in Charleston. I run our youth companies. So I when we have students this summer, I directed a whole production with like 18 kids in like 2.5 weeks, which was a lot of fun. I do private lessons now with some of my students until we can, get back into regular in-person lessons. And occasionally I'll do like playwriting classes and stuff like that, just for anybody. Like I did one last year during the pandemic that was like for like teaching people how to write screenplays. That was really cool.
Yeah.
So I've been, and I used to work for the North Charleston Office of Cultural Affairs, like doing after school programs for various schools throughout the state, or not the state, throughout Charleston. So I've been teaching off and on at various places since 2015 or so, and I love it. I'll do anything for students. Actually, just one of the things I did this year was direct a show for CFC. I did one last year as well, and I directed a play this year for the College of Charleston. So I love giving back to like young aspiring performers. That's like one of my favorite things to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. It's nothing better than be able to give back. When you've kind of starting to achieve what you're looking for, you want to go back and help you in whatever, areas that helped you along the way, show appreciation for that. That's always a great thing. Now, you mentioned when you were interviewing there, you were with Danny McBride. Now, not a lot of people are going to associate Danny McBride with more of his comedic roles, he's not in the movie, but like you said, he's, behind the scenes.
He's one of the writers.
Yeah. And a lot of people are going to relate, with him, Pineapple Express, Eastbound and Down, a lot of your comedic roles. Now, him getting over to the scarier side, at least in this Halloween, franchise here that he's got, I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, I really enjoyed the first Halloween and now Halloween Kills, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy, the last one, Halloween Ends. Is it really going to end?
I don't know. I haven't read the script. I don't know. Like, they just finished the script a couple of weeks ago, apparently, and I have not read it, and I don't see why they would send it to me.
Well, so let's clear something up real quick. Is it already shot? I thought I was told they shot it in sequence, so that's not true.
No. So the original plan before the pandemic and everything was we shot Halloween Kills in 2019.
Yep.
And then the plan was to wrap that movie. I think they were going to go ahead and write the sequel, and then they were supposed to film Halloween Ends this time last year. So in theory, Kills was supposed to come out last year, right? It was supposed to come out in 2020.
Yeah,
and the theory is that this actually would have been the weekend that Ends came out originally. Okay. There's going to be a year between Kills and Ends, and we should be watching in a non-pandemic world, we would have been watching the finale right now, in theory. Yeah. But I mean, a number of things got in the way. Obviously, the pandemic is probably the biggest and first one. But there, that team is also working on Righteous Gemstones. So they just wrapped season 2 of Righteous Gemstones. So I think working on Halloween Ends will be the next thing they work on. But they haven't shot the movie yet.
Okay. Now, do they shoot the gemstones? Is that at the Citadel Mall? Is that where they shoot the gemstones? That section?
Yeah, Citadel Mall is one of the locations. That's where the gemstone Locust Point Center is and stuff like that. Yeah. I actually got to work on 2 weeks of that this season. So
you made an appearance on there too. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna show up in a couple of episodes of season 2. And that's a blast of a show to work on too. And to get to work with Danny in front of the camera, as well as him having written Halloween. But working on Righteous Gemstones was really where I got to oh great, I'm getting to work with Danny. This is cool.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, when you get hooked into somebody watching them, especially when you first start seeing him, we mentioned Eastbound and Down, and like I said, Pineapple Express and other movies, you kind of just only see him in that comedic role. Now, there's another guy that you were talking about the last few years, some Halloween or some horror movies that's been putting out some good stuff. James Wan has got to be on that list for kicking out. Now, he's the guy behind the Conjuring and a lot of those other ones that are coming out. I mean, how do you feel about those films? Because I'm a fan of it. I didn't like the Conjuring 1. I liked the 2, and then I liked all the Insidiouses are pretty good.
I have seen one Conjuring movie. I just did it the one that came out this year on HBO Max. I watched.
I have not seen that one yet. I have not seen that.
I haven't really gotten into the Conjuring universe. I don't do ghosts or demon possession movies or stuff because not because I think they're scary. I don't believe in ghosts or demon possession stuff, and it's to a point where I can't even suspend disbelief long enough to watch the movie. The minute a movie starts and they're like, hey, our house is haunted, I will sometimes out loud just go, no, it's not. And then I can't, I'm everything that happens after that, I'm well, this wouldn't be happening because your house isn't haunted. That's not a real thing that happens. And same thing with demon possession. I just don't buy into it enough. So those movies don't interest me at all because I just can't watch them. It's not fair to them. Honestly, it's not fair to the movies. I'll just start watching and be what? Right, but that's not, but this isn't real. And my brain won't even go yeah, Michael, it's a movie. Nothing in the movie is real. I just can't do it. So I have only seen one Conjuring movie, and I haven't seen any of the Insidiouses or any of that stuff, because they're not they're just not a genre of movie I watch. So so I haven't seen any of those. And the one Conjuring movie I did watch this year, I was very confused.
Oh yeah.
Well, just because I haven't seen any of them. So I was wait, am I supposed to know who these people are? What's happening?
The first one I remember, which some movies have a habit of doing this, they give away about every big scare or big moment in the trailer. So nothing's really shocking or surprising. And that's what I kind of found with the first one. Now, the second one I liked, and the third one, like I said, I haven't actually had the time to sit down and watch that. I've been crazy busy these last few months. And so a lot of films have gotten by me that I want to try to plant down and watch. But I'm a habit of going back to what I know works. And sometimes I'll just rewatch certain shows and all that. Now, one of the shows, and it come around the same time Scream did, they're doing a show on that. The I Know What You Did Last Summer series on Amazon Prime.
I saw they were working on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like that I Know What You Did Last Summer movies. I mean, it was kind of not a page out of Scream because that was already a book before then, but now they changed the book. It didn't follow the book, how the movie went anyways. But yeah, what did you think about that series? Did you like that?
I really liked the first one when I saw it back in the day. I didn't really like the second one as much. And it's also a series I feel like I've been like for years been like, wow, of all the things that have gotten remade, I can't believe no one's touched that one. Like I can't believe that hasn't been brought back or remade until now. Yeah. Right. I'd kind of be interested to see what the Amazon one is up to, because I think it's an interesting premise, like people who are kind of tied to something and fear that somebody knows what they're doing. Absolutely. But I mean, ultimately, like I Know What You Did Last Summer movies can't hold a candle to Scream. Scream's just so good.
Yeah, Scream is on another level. Now, the guy that does the show with me, his name's Yeager. He's my childhood friend, and we worked together after high school for a little bit at a radio station in Florence, South Carolina. Now, the office was in like the third floor of like a 5-story building. And so they had just like a big section of it. So it had a bunch of multiple radio stations in this thing. And it used to be a creepy place at night. We used to have to stay up there and run like NASCAR races and stuff like that. So if they were at night, wouldn't get out of there to sometimes, 11 o'clock. It kept wrecking and having, caution flags. It was late by the time you got out of there. So you go out and there's this long hall. I mean, it was really creepy because if you're up there running that, nobody else is up there for anything at that point in time. So we kicked around the idea and we actually wrote a script and everything, and we're starting to shoot it. And then they told us we couldn't keep doing it up there. But we wrote a script called Caller 13 about a guy that would call the radio station. You're doing a contest, a giveaway. It was caller number 12 was the winner, but you answered it and it was like caller number 13. Sorry, you're not the winner. And he just gets pissed and he starts stalking. And like we were going to come up with these shots. We were looking down out of the window and see him down there on the ground. And then just him be in there, like not a lot of action. Cause of course we're shooting this on, $100 Best Buy cameras at the time or something, but just him being in there, but the guy not know that he's there, like standing in the corner. So very Michael Myers-esque, but like I said, they found out we were shooting up there and they told us we couldn't do it. So it kind of
that's a good idea though. You should go back to that. That's a pretty good idea. Have you seen The Vast of Night?
No, I have not.
Came out last year. It was on Amazon. It's still on Amazon, I should say. It came out last year, and I think you'd like it because if you like, that's a really cool idea. Vast of Night is another movie about people who are who work a late night radio show, but they get a call in from somebody who is talking about like something that somebody sees something in the sky, and then these like two teenagers are like trying to track down what it is, and they're staying on the radio, and they end up like getting caught up in this like this guy calls in with this like conspiracy thing that's going on. It really cool movie, very tense, very cool like conspiracy radio movie. Like The Vast of Night, definitely check that out. It was one of my favorite movies from last year.
Yeah, I have to give that a look because that's accurate, man. I got some wild and crazy phone calls up there because I wasn't an actual on-air talent. I was just there. So our job was to answer the phone, take requests or whatever. And they had an AM station that would, play like Rush Limbaugh, stuff like that,
Sure, yeah.
And there would be people that would call in there and just, have wild and crazy stories and just want to talk, just want to have conversations. And sometimes if you're in there by yourself and you ain't really got nothing going on, it's not a bad thing. So you would entertain those phone calls, and man, there was some crazy stuff being said. Like, and that's what I was like, if somebody really did get offended or like that or get upset,
they know where you are.
Yeah, everybody knows where you're at. Like if you win stuff, they say we're at the BTC building, 3rd floor. There's huge signs on the door, And I'm just like, it's not that hard for somebody to try to track you down. And at the time,
I used to work.
They had locks on them doors down there.
my first job ever in high school was at an AM radio station.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I worked nights, but it was like right on the main street and like it was right next to the window. So like I never felt unsafe. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I used to work nights. I used to like babysit the equipment for Atlanta Braves games. And like I used to have to work on Sunday morning, and it was a country music radio station. And so on Sunday mornings, I had to play both Christian country music and Christian Western music, because country and Western are two different kinds of music.
Yes.
Apparently. And I used to have to read obituaries on the air every Sunday. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yep. That was my first job in college, was reading obituaries live on the air on Sundays, and all the other stuff I had to do at the radio station. And people would you had to be like very specific, because people would call in and be like, it's actually pronounced this. And we had one guy who would call in every week. He would want to know what song was currently playing on the radio. He would want to know the time, and he would want to know there was something else, and it was very specific, and he'd call every week. And I could never figure it out, because I was like, wait, but he can hear the song, and he could like cell phone, like he could find out the time some other way. I just never understood. But he would do it every week. I was warned on like my first day, like, hey, when you're here on Sunday, this guy is going to call. I don't think anyone knew. I don't know if anybody actually knew who. I don't remember. But like, we might not have even known this guy's name. But like, my friend was like, he's going to call every week. He wants to know these 3 things. Just tell them to him. He'll say something. You probably won't be able to understand it, and then hang up. I was like, okay, weird.
Yeah, I never had anybody quite repetitive as that, but there are, I almost have to use the term, your regular callers that that they're going to be on there. Sometimes that wasn't a bad thing. Like if I thought I hit a certain button to go back and, there was a few seconds of dead air, they could call right quick and let you know, hey, it's not back on. What's going on? And I'd have to look.
Oh, especially in a small town, they'll call immediately. Someone's got that radio station on. Yes. They will let you know. Hey, by the way, there's nothing on the air. We can't hear it. Like, what? Oh no, is the equipment messed up? Hang on, I'll fix that.
Yeah. That was sometimes it was a safety valve for you for sure. But yeah, man, well, that's cool. We got some similar backgrounds there in the radio, because that's what we did a lot was board operating and stuff like that. And that kind of set us into this. He's a photographer down here. Now, I was still a welder. We spoke about this earlier, but I'm a welder by trade. So that's kind of what I've been doing. But I've always had a love of films, and how not just the films of watching them, but how they were made. I was a big fan of, if I'm going to sit down and watch a movie, then I want to go watch the documentary, or not, documentary if it's made, but watch it with commentary from the director or an actor, and see like, okay, well, this is, we had issues shooting this for this reason. And now doing this podcast, it kind of just gives me, I didn't need the motivation, but it's like extra motivation to dive into certain things that I like. Like one of our last episodes, we covered Don Simpson. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you Don Simpson is, but in the 80s and early 90s, pretty much any high-powered action movie that you watched, he had something to do with. Top Gun, Days of Thunder, The Rock, Bad Boys. And he pretty much lived his life just like he did his movies, high-paced, no brakes, all gas, fueled with drugs and about anything else. And he met an untimely early end, but if he could have stayed on a straight and narrow, man, there's no telling. Him and Jerry Bruckheimer were partners, and they were together, and they kind of, made it together, and they were coming up. They done Flashdance, I think, was one of their biggest ones to start. And then it was Top Gun, and then Days of Thunder. And then on after that, they did The Rock. And around the time, I think it was when they finished The Rock, was when they split. Jerry Bruckheimer could tell that Don was kind of getting a little too reckless, and they split. So Jerry obviously went on to have a great career. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff since then. Everybody knows who Jerry Bruckheimer is, even people that aren't really, knowledgeable of directors and producers, but he's got his hands on a lot of stuff. But yeah, Don had a interesting life, man, because they filmed the movie Days of Thunder. A portion of that, I don't know if you ever seen it, but it's got Tom Cruise, and he's like it's not NASCAR. They don't call it NASCAR in there, but he's a race car driver. And one of the scenes where he wins his first race was actually shot in my hometown where I grew up in Darlington, South Carolina. So that movie was kind of a big deal. You know, you got Tom Cruise coming here. And at that time, Tom was just like, you know, he was top of the mountain, man. He had already come off a Top Gun. So he was the big deal. So to have him in our small little town, that was a huge deal. But yeah, I love.
I've never seen that movie, but I do remember at the like King's Dominion, they used to have like a Days of Thunder like car, like 4D car ride thing, and I used to ride that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's that, and that we talked about it on that episode of the podcast. That movie was actually the flop. Like they had signed a deal, I think like a 4-picture deal or whatever, and it was pretty substantial money at the time. They both went and bought like matching Ferraris, and you know, when they done Days of Thunder, and I think at that time it was for Paramount, that flopped because they spent so much money into getting these shots. Like it was a lot of extra money. They spent like, I want to say $300,000 just on like the clothes for people to have like actual authentic racing clothes. And it was just, they went way over budget. And I think it actually made like a little money, but not a lot. And they actually got released from their deal from Paramount after that. Now, then they kind of righted the ship with Bad Boys, because that was a good action movie with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And I think it had a sequel to that as well. And then The Rock, a lot of people love The Rock. That's one of my favorite Sean Connery movies, him and Nick Cage. And that kind of started Nick Cage on his, you know, rise with the action movies, because he done Con Air too, and that was a Bruckheimer film. Did you see Con Air?
I have never actually watched Con Air.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting film. It's an interesting concept. You take your prisoners and escape, but it's just, you know, not in a prison. It's on a plane, you know, up in the air. So it's a pretty cool little film.
Yeah, I know what it's about. I've never sat down and watched it.
Yeah, it's a cool film. Well, look at what was some of your most memorable moments on the set for Halloween Kills, because like you said, you got a much larger part here in the second one. What was some of your favorite scenes to film, or things you've seen, or, you know, experiences that you had on there?
Everything at the bar, I really liked. That my whole first week was shooting things at, you know, the bar that everybody's in at the beginning of the movie. And we had a ton of extras on set, everybody in Halloween costumes, which was really cool. I was like, oh, look at this. Like, you know, we spent that week got like, some of those calls were a little earlier, and then they got just later and later and later. And eventually it's just like, okay, well, these are just night shoots now.
Yeah.
But like, it was really cool. It was a good week to like sort of get my footing, or, you know, I kind of walked on the set, and, you know, you do so many like, you know, smaller, you do like under fives, or like, you know, these sort of day player roles and stuff where you're in for like a day or two. And you know, I've done plenty of those, and I always try and stay out of the way until I'm needed. Right. Right. Like, film's a machine. And for me, it's like, show up, hit your marks, say your lines, don't stop the machine from running.
Yeah.
On Halloween Kills, from the very beginning, it was really interesting to be a part of the machine, right? To sort of be there every day. So once we started filming, I had to get used to the idea of like, oh, I'm not like visiting the set. I'm not, you know, this is me as part of the cast being a part of the machine. So, you know, being comfortable, you know, taking time and sort of like not having to stay out of the way was really cool. And I had to get used to it fast, but I also was able to like, I can stand over here and watch a take. Oh, that's really cool. All right, great. Like, I can just sit and observe and watch the creative team like plan shots and like the camera department set up. Like, this is all great just for me. Like you said, as somebody who cares a lot about how movies are made, as somebody who is, you know, who makes films, I wanted to have that seat as well. So if I wasn't in front of the camera, like I was lurking somewhere just to watch departments work, just to watch, you know, David and Attila, our AD, like plan where we were going for the rest of the night and solving problems on the fly. Like those were some of my favorite moments from a set, was just being in that environment, and having time to be in that environment. You know, you there for 4 weeks. Like, I got to pick up a lot of stuff and like sort of soak in a lot of stuff. And then, you know, I mean, working with Kyle and Nancy and Richard and Mike, Anthony Michael Hall, like,
yeah,
you know, they're all lovely, lovely people to work with. Like, Anthony Michael Hall's a film icon, and he from day one, from the very beginning, is like super warm, super accepting guy. Like, definitely, like, I showed up on set. At no point did he make me feel like any less of a scene partner, and I really appreciated that, because you get somebody who's an indisputable film legend, like, who's enjoying working with you back. Then it's like, okay, great, like, now I have to respect that he considers me an equal. Like, let's get to work, like, let's go, right? And just some of that stuff was like just fun to shoot, like really like fun to like watch and do. I mean, everything in the car, slight spoilers, I guess, for anybody who, like, you stop listening now, go watch Halloween Kills, and then you can come back. But like, yeah, all the stuff in the car, that took a week of filming, like lots of rehearsal time, lots of prep. Just like, man, I got to spend a whole week standing next to like the Michael Myers mask. Yeah. I got to be up close to James Courtney, who plays Michael. Great guy, super cool, super fun scene partner. And like, but also like, come on, man, like, how many often do you get to like sit in a car and be like this close from the Michael Myers mask, right? Yeah. Like, I got to touch it. Like, I was like, okay, this is really cool. This is awesome right here. Like, and then, getting getting pretty brutally killed was actually really
I was going to get to that. Before you mentioned the car scene. Now, I think sometimes people don't grasp how long it takes to film something that you as the viewer, it rolls through in 5 minutes. You don't realize how much work, blood, sweat, tears, whatever is put in to those types of things. Now that scene there involving that car, I mean, I guess maybe just the one where he's actually gets on the car and starts coming in there and taking people out one by one. I mean, you said that took about 4 weeks to shoot?
No. So okay. So for context, right? Everything that happens to us at the bar, the car crash, Carmela getting out of the car and trying to get, like, everything that happened to the bar, that we shot that over a week.
Okay.
It also then took a week just to film the scene at the park. So okay. Like, that scene at the park is maybe 7 minutes of movie time, right? Between Lindsay yelling at the kids, Michael attacking the car, people dying, Lindsay hiding in the water. That took a week to film, and it's like, comparatively, 7 minutes. The previous 30 minutes also took a week to film, right? So it's just, it's some of that stuff. The attack on the car, like, there's just a lot of moving pieces. There was a lot of different setups. There are a lot of effects. Like, some of the stuff, like individual shots, would take all night to set up, just because, you blow somebody's head off, like somebody blows their own head off, like that requires like the whole setup beforehand. It requires stunt doubles. It requires like special head pieces and costume pieces. Like, that took hours to film. Like, one whole night was basically spent on that. So, that kind of stuff, like, it's crazy. Somebody watches the movie and like you said, it flies by in like 5 minutes, and I'm watching it going, well, that was a week of our lives. Those 5 minutes was a week of our lives. Also, being in the backseat of a car for a week is a long time to be acting in the backseat of a car for a week. Like, that's, for an entire week, all I did was sit in the backseat of a car and like react to stuff. And it was really cool. It was very eye-opening, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And like, it's also one of the places where, like, oh, cool, nobody ever does anything. Like, how do you do something like this? Let's figure it out. And everybody on set being like, hey, how are we going to do this? I don't know how specific we want to get into like the details of it for anybody. Again, if you haven't watched the movie yet, you should not be listening to this.
I wanted to get to the kill eventually, because it's, I mean, let's get this out of the way. And I think it's pretty well known by then. If you're a fan, you've seen the clips. Michael is on a different level of killing in this whole movie.
It's pretty brutal. Yeah.
He comes out of that basement where it left off from the first one. And I mean, he takes out 7, 8 firemen, right off the rip. But your death scene, in my opinion, is up there pretty high, man. I mean, that was pretty brutal. I mean, you're up there pretty high on that list.
Thank you. It was really cool. It was the first thing they told me about the movie. When they said, "Hey, we're bringing you back." When I finally got confirmation that they were bringing me back in the movie, it was basically, "Hey, you're getting killed. You need to go to LA for makeup stuff." And then, so yeah, and that was the first thing I did. The first thing I did was getting a mold taken so that they could create the prosthetics and stuff. I didn't read the script until I was getting on the flight. So I knew I was dying, but I didn't know anything else about the movie or my character, what we were going to do with bringing this character back until, like I said, I was already on the way to like prep the death scene. Right. But yeah, that's an example of something that like we had to figure it out because, the way we do that shot is it's 2 different shots. Everything after the stab of like me with, blade out of my eye bleeding, all of that's practical. We did all of that. That's all one take of one night where we put that prosthetic over my eye, and I sat in makeup for an hour and a half putting that all on, and then they say action and he lets go and I bleed out, and it's just me reacting to the bleed out and stuff. That was a whole night basically. Like that took a long time during one of the nights. And then the actual stabbing is funny because we filmed it in reverse.
Oh, okay.
That's how we had to do it. Like, basically we started with me like in a position of like having been stabbed, and then on action, like Jim pulls it's just a handle. There's no blade, right. Obviously. He pulls the handle away and I like react, and then we go back to like the setup right before. And then when we play it back, it's like from this to up. And that was really hard because we had to like, they basically were like, "Hey, we're going to have to film this in reverse. Do you think you can do that?" And I was like, "I don't know. Let's try it." And then we did a couple takes, and then they had me come look at them, and I watched them play it back in reverse so that I could see what it looked like. And I was like, "Oh, I need to snap my head more here."
Yeah.
And again, you're planning basically for on action a reverse movement that when they play it will look good. And I don't know, I think it came out pretty well. People seemed, every time I've watched it with audiences a couple of times now, and the reactions are always like, and I'm like, yes, good. if an entire crowd of people has no choice but to yell out during your death, then I think you've got a good death going.
Right. And especially in that movie, like I said, the total kill count, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's probably higher than any other Halloween movie that I think I've seen.
Easily. It's got to be. Easily. I mean,
I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Somebody's already counted it up, but it's definitely well beyond. You might have to go. I don't even know if I can think of a horror movie offhand where somebody's killed that many people. I mean, I don't think Jason never got that many.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's got to be in the 20s. I think he's got to kill at least a good, depending on how many firefighters there are and how many people there are in that final scene.
Yeah, that town meeting
it's got to be. He's got to be in the 20s in this movie alone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I seen a picture the other day. It was like a still frame of everybody around Michael. And it was like, it said this one woman was determined to get hers. She's holding an iron.
An iron. The Iron Lady? God, the Iron Lady's my favorite. Every time when I first saw that, I wasn't there that night for that part. So then when I first saw the movie, I saw the lady with the iron. I was like, I don't know who she is. I hope she's in the next one. Tell me her backstory in the next one. She showed up with an iron. Like, just whatever you got, just bring it.
Now, when y'all filmed this one, was this also down here, or more of this was in the Wilmington area?
It was in Wilmington. Yeah. We filmed in Wilmington for a month. Yeah.
Okay. Now, was any of that filmed down here in Charleston, or not so much with this one?
None of it was. They filmed the whole thing in Wilmington, and I think the next one, Savannah, maybe. I don't know. Don't ask me. I'm not there.
Okay. Now, when did you guys shoot Halloween Kills?
September. We started in September of 2019.
Okay. So you started.
Yeah, and wrapped late October.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember last year when it got pushed back for a year, and I'm sure they did that for the theater revenue not being there when the theaters were shut down. So I understood from a financial point why they had to do it. Now, as a fan, I'll admit I was pissed because they had just dropped that trailer, and it's like they're riding off on the truck, and then they see the fire trucks passing them. And that just automatically lets you know, man, I like it when movies do that, when they would pick up right where the other one left off and you kind of have that continuation of the story. And I thought that was so cool. And I was jacked for it. I was like, man, I'm ready to go. I want to see this. And it was like, yeah, it's going to be pushed till 2020. And I'm just like, or 2021 or whatever it was a year later. And I was just like, man, that sucks. But
you think like you were upset? I've got pictures on my phone I haven't been able to show anybody for 2 years.
Oh man, that had to be brutal.
I got stories I haven't been able to tell. People have been like, hey, like I was like, I've been telling people, yeah, I'm in Halloween Kills. People have been like, okay. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not just like in the background of Halloween Kills. Like I'm one of its main characters, but nobody knows what that means. Like for 2 years, like, oh, I was upset. But I also, I was upset too. I was really upset. Fans were really upset. But man, like once opening weekend got here and I got to watch that movie in the theater with like horror fans, like I was like, oh, I'm so glad they waited, because you wouldn't have gotten that experience. Like it's a really cool, it's a really cool horror movie because it's got a ton of kills. It's got laughs. It's got the stuff that people go to a horror movie to see in the theater. You know what I mean? Like, I think holding it was the right call for the movie. Honestly, like for the movie's sake, I think it was the right call.
I agree with it in hindsight, because like I said, it's the #1 movie in America right now at the box office. So they definitely made the right call, because you think about all the theater revenue that, they would have lost out if they'd done a straight to DVD or, straight to cable or however the streaming services that they have. And this one's even on Peacock. I think you got to have Peacock Premium, I believe.
Nope, you just got a Peacock. Like if you have it at all.
Regular people. Okay. All right. Yeah, I've got it. I can't even remember last time I watched it. My son watches it because he likes the WWE network transferred over to Peacock. So that's why he has it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, so even with that, I'm sure some people probably watched it at the house, but it's still banging numbers at the theater. And that's great for you guys, man. Well, listen, I'm super happy the movie's doing good. You got The Righteous Gemstones. You say you were in that. What have you got coming up down the line that we can look forward to catching you in?
I am currently working on a voiceover project, like an animated voiceover series that should be out next year, as well as I earlier this year recorded a dramatic podcast for iHeartRadio that'll be out next year, and then Righteous Gemstones, and then I'm constantly working on stuff. I've got some shoots lined up, a couple of movie projects I'm gonna work on beginning of next year. So yeah, I mean, couple of audio performances, and the Righteous Gemstones are the next things that are already in the can, I should say.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and I'm always posting about new stuff or talking about new stuff. So follow me on social media. People see where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. You're on Facebook there. You're on Instagram. What are all your handles so people can find you?
People can follow me on Instagram at Michael Smallwood Forever. You can follow me over on Twitter at Mike Loves Gushers. They're my favorite candy, so that's why it's my Twitter handle. I would say that people can just send me boxes of Gushers, but like, no, don't do that. I feel like it's a terrible decision. And then so you can follow me on Instagram or over on Twitter. And yeah, like I said, I post all sorts. I post about projects that I've got coming up. And I have a podcast as well. If you're a fan of the NBC show Community,
yes.
I host a podcast called Welcome to Greendale. That's my wife and I taking a friend of ours who has never seen Community through it episode by episode, and processing it and reliving it, and that's been a lot of fun. So yeah, we're about 80 episodes in right now. We're in like deep into season 4, and it's going to end next year. And I don't know what I'm going to do because I won't have Community to watch anymore.
Yeah. A lot of the shows now, they're coming out with podcasts about it where it stars. I'm a huge TV or Sopranos fan. Like to me, that was one of the best TV shows of all time, like hands down, just the acting, the writing, everything. And Michael Imperioli and Steve Sciarippa, who in the series, they were Christopher Moltisanti and Bobby Bactari. they're doing a Talking Sopranos podcast.
Oh,
and they
cool.
go through every episode one by one, and they'll bring on people from the show, on down to directors, photographers, people that just had a few episodes, whatever the case. And then they recap the episode as far as, what it took to shoot it and things like that. Well, That's what they're saying is they're getting all this mail. They're like, listen, we love you two guys. We love the banner back and forth. What are you going to do when it's over, when you hit your last episode, which I'm waiting on that to find out what they think about him, if he died or whatever. But yeah, I don't know if you start this out with this, we're going to do this and that's going to last us a long time. Well, then when you get there, then it's like, what next after that? What can you go to keep them hooked? I don't know. They said they're not going to do anything else. They said they're just going to let it be.
And we might not either. We came up with this idea. Community hit 10 years in 2019, and that was when we started the podcast. And we're big fans. We always wanted to do the show, and we've had some people listen to us. We've got a good little following. We've had a writer from the show on. Megan Gantz joined us. Took a break from writing Mythic Quest to come be on our show, but I think I don't know what we'll do when we're done. Maybe we'll be like, all right, Sadia, what else haven't you watched? Or we'll be done and we'll move on to other projects. I don't know. But right now we're having a good time. It's a great way. What a great way to like rediscover a TV show you love, having to watch it one episode at a time, week by week, and then discuss it. Like I guess I'm telling everybody, if there's a TV show you really love and you constantly binge it, I don't know, start a podcast. So you have to watch one episode a week so that you can get back to like really appreciating it.
Yeah. What if you had to give me one of your favorite TV shows? What's your favorite TV show?
The Wire. The Wire is my favorite TV show of all time.
Yeah, it's hard to beat the acting in that, man. I always said you got Sopranos and you got The Wire, and that's your Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant debate. I mean, there are other shows I really love. I love I have a small list of what I consider perfect TV. There's nothing bad. There's no episodes to replace. Great show all the way around. Perfect endings. The Wire is one of them. I think The Good Place is one of them. Mm-hmm. I think Bojack Horseman is one of them. I think Bojack Horseman's perfect from start to finish. But it's not a deep roster. I'm actually rewatching The Sopranos right now. My wife and I are watching it. She's never seen it before. I've never seen it all the way through. I've seen bits and pieces here and there, like a season here, 3 episodes here. Yeah. And
rewatching it it's great. But yeah, no, my favorite show of all time is The Wire, hands down, no question.
Yeah, we got to sit down with J.D. Williams, who played Bodie.
I know. I was so jealous. Look at that. I was like, come on, man. Bodie, what are we doing?
Yeah.
One of the best characters in TV history.
Yeah. And we talked about how that night, they killed Michael B. Jordan, very young Michael B. Jordan in the
baby Michael Baby Jordan.
Yeah. And he was giving some insight there, but he was really worried of not working again after that scene, and that's what, like we were kind of discussing earlier with your death in here. He was trying to tell him that, look, as an actor, you want a great death, something them to remember you by. You don't want to just be this average go out. You want to have that, going out in style, so to speak. And everybody remembers when Wallace got, taken out. I mean, you could tell it was that thing where even they didn't want to do it, even though they knew it had to be done. They didn't want to do it. And obviously, he didn't want to die, but that was a great show, man. And we're losing a lot of people off of that show. It's really sad.
And you said something just into, I especially about Halloween Kills, right? Like, people have asked me like, man, do you wish they hadn't killed you and that you could be in the next one? And I'm like, no, man, they killed me great. Like, it's an incredible death. People constantly talk about. I got to do some really cool stuff while filming it. It's visually amazing. It's visceral, and it's one that people will remember. And in this franchise, in horror especially, but like this franchise, like, come on, man, Michael Myers got to stab me in the face with one of his knives. Like, that's huge. He doesn't, like, if you go back and look at the movies, like, Michael Myers doesn't even kill that many people with knives, right? But we think of him, we think of the butcher knife whenever we think of that character. But how many characters have actually been killed by it? More maybe in this movie now because of the final scene, but like, how many characters have actually been killed by it? Like, I have that honor and that distinction, and like, for me, that's an honor. Like, that's something I'm going to get to carry. That's something I'll get to like go and talk to fans about forever now. Is that like, it'll be like, oh man, your death scene was like the coolest part of that movie. Like, Yeah, I'd rather have that than like a handful of scenes in all three movies. Like, I'm so glad that I got this really cool opportunity to like have one of his, cinema's greatest monsters.
Yeah, for sure.
Like ruin my face.
another knife scene in there was, I think is it Lenny Clark? Is that his name? Where they were at the house and he stabbed him with like 6 different knives.
Yeah.
Now, see, I watched him. I don't know. It was a TV show that was on FX, and it was kind of around the same time The Shield and Nip Tuck were on, but it was called Rescue Me. Mm-hmm. Where it was about firefighters in New York, and he had a role on there for a couple of seasons. He was funny, and the way he talks and his kind of high pitched squeals and everything, it would just made me think of Rescue Me, and I enjoyed that little tidbit because he opens up the door. I'm thinking the slams it. He's like, "There's this huge guy in the bathroom," and then obviously they kind of meet their end when it comes out. But he was did you see him or work with him at all? I know
nope, did not get a chance to work with him at all. In fact, while they were filming that stuff, we were like outside that house that they were using, like rehearsing stuff. So like, no, I got to go over that way a little bit, but I didn't get to meet him at all.
Yeah, I know. Even though you're watching the movie and you're like, well, that happened right before this. A lot of times that's, you're not shooting it that way. A lot of times you're shooting out of sequence a lot. I know some movies, people don't typically, I think, like to do it, especially main characters, of shooting like the endings first, because you don't really know how to carry yourself. You don't know what that person's really been. You might have read it on a page, but by the time you get done filming all that stuff, you can carry it a little bit different. So I've heard, different interviews where people say they do not like to film like some of the last scenes of the movie in the beginning. And I know sometimes, depending, maybe on weather or whatever, budgets or whatever, you might have to do that, but I can see where you would want to wait to the end personally.
It just depends on, movie sets or movie production schedules are always about location availability and, location availability schedules, like what, every piece has to all come together. So we shot in, they shot in just every week was a different location. Mm-hmm. On this movie. And for me, it just so happened that my first scenes, kind of the first scenes for everybody, but my first scenes were like the opening scenes for me, right? So that was really great. And then but the next week was the car stuff. And then my third week was the week that we shot like, us arriving to the hospital and joining up the Tommy. So like that was slightly out of order. But I got to start, with this beginning stuff. Like, so I think my first scene that I shot was the very first scene that I'm in, which was I was like, oh great, I get to like build this in order. But it's it's a luxury. Like, not everything is. I've certainly done it the other way where it's been like wildly out of order, and
right,
you just have to adapt basically, and just say that like, all right, well, this is what we're filming right now, and this is what we're doing. This is where we are in the movie, like Right.
Well, I tell you what, man, I'm just super glad you could come on the show. I'm really glad you could put it out there. Now, one thing we like to do here on the show is we kind of ask for people to give, advice in whatever field they're in. If someone was looking to do this, like I said, you taught for a little while, you had a desire to get in here, whether it be in front of the camera, behind the camera. I think a lot of times, especially, nowadays, people are kind of pushed towards, getting a profession and certain careers. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a desire to do something in film or television or the arts or anything like that, theater, what would you give someone with those kind of ambitions coming up, like as a high schooler fixing to graduate? What would be your, directions for them? Where would they go? What classes would they try to take? Things like that.
I think my first piece of advice would be, don't listen to anybody who isn't in the industry. They don't know what they're talking about. So, a lot of times people will say like, oh, well, it's really hard. You need to have a fallback, or it's really impossible. You need to be in like one or two places. And it's like, okay, but those people don't know what they're talking about. So don't listen to them. Listen to people who have been in the industry. Like, that's my first piece of advice. Like, please find people who have actually done this work and ask them about how to do it, because they'll know like that, that random negative aunt of yours who like has seen movies about Hollywood or saw La La Land. And it's like, it looks hard. Like they don't know what they're talking about. So that's my first piece of advice. And then my second, piece of advice is, like getting started, there's no path, right? Like my path is completely different from someone else's. There is no accepted path. And I think that what's cool about that is really it's not so much like getting a foot in the door. It's basically like, okay, great, but this building has like 8 doors and 90 windows. Just climb in somewhere. So that would be my other big piece of advice is like find your way in. I went to college and I started doing this in junior high. I went to college for it and studied acting, and like, I took that path, but like you can just take acting lessons from, people who have worked in the industry. Like most cities have somebody teaching acting lessons somewhere. Yeah. Most cities have some sort of theater scene or performing scene. Most cities have some sort of film community. Find your local film community, introduce yourself and say, hey, I want to get involved in some way and learn. Like there's no way that you should have started. There's no time period where you should have started. It's just a matter of like figuring out your path and walking down it. It takes a long time. It's very like, it takes a long time. It can, again, different path for different people. It can take a long time, but finding a path and walking down it and being perseverant, not taking no for an answer, basically, Yeah. But yeah, my number one piece of advice would be to like, I don't know, talk to people in the business. Don't talk to just random people who don't know what they're talking about, because they're just going to be negative about it because they think it's really hard. And it is, but it's not impossible. Like I'm in Halloween Kills. It's not impossible, right?
Yeah, and that's why I really wanted to reach out to him. I'm like, this guy, he seems like he's real down to earth, and he did it. He taught, he done his thing, he done his time, and he's in Halloween Kills. How awesome is this? Like you said, to be in this centerpiece of horror franchise history, like we spoke earlier. You got Freddy, you got Jason, you got Michael Myers. Those are the top names in the horror genre that stretch all the way back, to the first one. I don't know, was it late 70s or early
78?
78, yeah. So, I mean, that's stretching decades upon decades there. And here you are, and you're getting to take a knife right through the jaw into the eye there from them. I mean, that's some cool stuff. That lets you know, like you said, don't let anybody outside of what you're trying to accomplish dictate a route or path you take. I mean, I remember, like we spoke earlier, I think they actually put an ad out looking for people to send in like headshots for like background work and stuff like that.
Every movie that films that needs extras does that in every town they do. Charleston does it here. There's a whole thing there are whole places you can sign up to be like an extra for every movie that comes through. Like it's not impossible to work in film. It just, like I said, it requires finding one of the many open windows and ajar doors in that building. There's not just the one, right? So as far as like and it's weird because like specific advice, it's like, well, I don't know, this is what worked for me specifically, but it might not work for you depending on where you are and what, where you're willing to go and stuff like that. But like, there's a bunch of different ways in, and you just got to find yours, and experience is your best friend. So like getting as many opportunities to be on sets as possible. And like I said, just finding a community, finding people who are also looking to do the work and working together to get better. That's step one.
And like you said, in those communities, I'm sure it doesn't take long to find people that have these passion projects that they want to throw together. So, offer your help, offer some ideas. I'm sure you'll be able to team up with somebody that, likes your idea, or you might like their idea, and you're just, willing to help, and what you add to their project can make it just a little bit better. So for sure, I love to see things like that. I love to see people still interested in going that route, because I mean, like you said, is it easy? No, it's not easy. Everybody would be doing it, but there's a reason new movies come out, every week. There are people that has to film them, and that's not just the people that you see in front of the camera. There's a lot of work that, like you said, goes on behind the scenes, and that's what, you alluded to. You're studying it. You're a student of the game. If you're not in front of it, doing your thing, acting, then you want to see what it is they're doing behind the scenes, because that don't do nothing but just up your game as to what you can do. Because I mean, that's why a lot of these guys went from being in front of the camera to directing their own movies. Bob De Niro done one. Bronx Tale was his directorial debut. Clint Eastwood's another one that's done some films from behind the camera. So definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things too, where like, you know, like you said, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it. So it is really hard, but it also, you know, the nature of it means that it's hard in a way that like it automatically weeds out people who can't.
Yes,
because you know it requires a certain level of drive. It requires a certain level of perseverance that like most people don't actually have. Like,
yeah,
you know, it will always be easier to not go after it because it's difficult to get, and the difference in anybody who gets there and doesn't are the people who like don't stop going after it and don't stop getting better, right? So
for sure.
Yeah, that's my advice for it, I guess.
One of my favorite actors, and we talked about the film Pulp Fiction earlier, is Samuel L. Jackson. And I want to say he was maybe late 40s by the time he was actually starting to really get those big roles. He had been in a few roles here and there, but he was pretty later on in life before he started doing these roles. And it took that one, and then it snowballed from there on out. And I mean, obviously he don't need to do a thing for the rest of his life. He's probably pretty set money wise, but I mean,
it's just a matter of
fantastic actor.
Like I said, it's not about age. Like, you know, some people don't even start the journey until they're much later in life. And some people, you know, it takes them decades of throwing their throwing their head against the wall before they finally make a dent. And both those paths are valid. The difference is like there are some people who get there after 20 or 30 years of nothing, and they finally get there because they don't stop. Those 20, 30 years are full of them like perfecting their craft and constantly working on it. I mean, you know, Mad Men, right? Famously, the creator of Mad Men was like tired of not creating anything, had been in LA for 20 or at least years, and was always pitching shows, and they never got picked up. And then when somebody finally said, let's make this, cast all these people who had been in Hollywood banging their head against the wall, right? I mean, John Hamm was a school teacher before Mad Men plucked him out of like somebody who was like, yeah, I tried it for a while and it wasn't working, so I was doing something else, right? Like, it's, you know, there's a bunch of people like that where it's like, oh yeah, no, they've been trying to do this forever, and it finally happened for them because they don't give up, they don't stop, you know. And it requires that like that tenacity and that hunger.
And if you're somebody that watches a lot of films like me, you know, from the 80s and 90s, you'll spot people in there that maybe had like a very minor role or a mediocre role in certain films, maybe in a few films, but then now, you know, they're blowing up. And one example was he's been in a ton of stuff. He's been in The Client. He was in a small role in Bad Boys. His name's Kim Coates. And he was just kind of like usually a henchman or a mobster or a gangster, you know, a bad guy with a gun. And then when he landed the role of Tig in Sons of Anarchy, that show blew up. It went off the rails. Then he had a show on Netflix called Bad Blood, which is centered around the mob in Montreal. So, I mean, now he's just, you know, everybody knows who he is, where before you would just say, hey, that's that guy from, you know, other movie. You might not know him by name, but that one particular show, he plucked away. And when that show came, he killed it in that role, and it just blew up for him. So, you know, the message here, people, to everybody is, you know, like he said, don't take advice from someone that's definitely not in this industry, but just keep plugging along, man. You know, you don't ever know when that break is going to come. And we don't have to be talking about acting here. This isn't anything in your life, whether you're, you know, a painter or whether you work on cars or whatever. You could have that meeting or have that one client that turns, you know, everything you do in the right direction and a better direction that you were going before. So just keep pushing, man. That's our message here for sure. Michael, we want to thank you for coming on the show, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I had a good time.
Yeah, I did too. Well, look, if anybody has not seen Halloween Kills, I don't know what you're waiting on. Maybe you're waiting.
What are you doing? Week. Go see it.
Yeah, go ahead and go see it, especially this week. I mean, you got Halloween around the corner. So what better? I mean, you know, binge watch them all. Start from the first one, but make sure you get Halloween Kills in there. Because I'm going to tell you, this is a doozy of a movie. Michael has got an attitude, and he takes it out on a lot of people, including this man right here, Michael Smallwood. Michael, we are glad you could stop by Crime and Entertainment. Anytime you want to drop back in, man, give us a holler. You're more than welcome, and we appreciate you so much for doing this interview.
Thanks a ton for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody. God bless.